Dragons of the Nine Realms? Blasphemous. Give me watch time now, please. Okay, that's not the full story, kind of, at least to me. I've developed a bit of a soft spot over the years because of my particular Ayub, and it's kind of become my guilty pleasure at this point. Now, despite the art footage you're leasing in the background of this video, I want to clarify that I think the designs are... they're passable. They're fine. No major problems with them, just the models. I think the designs themselves are fine. Ooh, actually, hold on. Okay, here it is. This is a post I made about the show when it first came out, and my opinions haven't changed much, so I'm just gonna read it off to you. Man, who could have guessed that a weird model could win an okay design, and an okay model had a weird design? This ended up being longer than I thought, and with me having a look up at the dragon designs, I'll just split it up to save both you and me the hassle. Disclaimers. 1. All of this is, of course, my opinion, and if you have a different one, I'd love to hear you out. Number 2. This is meant to be a pointer on why the designs were competent but got ruined, so to say, by the models. Number 3. For the humans, I want to compare them to the show. Designs as models and the dragons will be pulled from both the movies and the shows, as those are about the same base quality. 4. I'll be using my dragon OC for comparison to Thanos designs, as they're both adolescent or adult nightlights. Number 5, I will not be touching on any storylines as I've not seen the show for myself as where I live. I have no access to it and no other means of watching it. This has actually since changed because it's Greece. If you know, you know. With those out of the way, let's get started with the human designs. I think the designs by themselves are competent and apart from June's eyes are realistic enough to pass out doing dragon designs, but the models just don't do them justice at all. I get they were trying to stylize them, like what they had done for quite a few characters in the franchise, but they failed, some worse than others. Tom's is the best one, with Alex being not that far behind. Honestly, she just needs to have some proportions changed, and she's good to go. I have nothing to really say about these two. I like their designs and their models are quite alright. June as well, at least to me. Changing the proportions of the eyes and their colors all you really need to do in my opinion. And then we have poor D'Angelo. I think I know what they were trying to do. I think. His body type gives me Snot-Out vibes, and I think that's what they were trying to go for. But that is just big. Along with the eyes, and it looks the most off out of all of them. There is a difference between a weird design with a good model and a good design on a weird model. Now, enjoy my thunder rant, because even back then I knew that screaming incest because of a bad model is silly and stupid, and I hate it. Now, let me say this right out of the gate. No, I don't think the problem is his colors and markings, and it doesn't have that big of an effect on his design problems, as everyone seems to think it does. Is it still a problem? Yes, but it's the least of our boys' worries, and you will see why. His legs are both too short and too long for how heavy his body looks. It legit looks like he shouldn't be able to stand up, let alone walk. I'd be more inclined to believe this dragon uses its tail as a pogo stick in order to get around rather than his legs. His face is too wide for how short it is. It actually makes me wonder how his brain fits in there. His ears and fins are roughly the size of his whole head in length and also look too heavy for the way they're attached to the face. There's also something wrong with his snout, but I can't exactly describe it. It's like the snout of a very old stuffed animal, but it's also too short and too wide, and it makes it look like his nose has either been forced in there or fallen off somehow. Basically, his proportions are the biggest problem, and they have managed to make them look wrong in both the same and yet completely different ways. It's honestly kind of impressive. Also, his scales, but we'll touch onto that later. Now, let me compare Thunder to my very own Nightlight, Light Knight. The creative name, I know. since we haven't canonically seen either adults as adolescent Nightlight, and then compared them both to Toothless since that's the dragon they were both based on. Actually, we have, but it's in like season 4, and that wasn't out at the time. Let's do a quick rundown so we're on here all day. 1. Colors and patterns. Just like black and white cats or orcas don't suddenly look ridiculous after they've grown up, same goes for them. It doesn't matter what patterns they have, what color they are, or where they are. When you mess up on everything else, it will always look wrong. Toothless doesn't have any patterns, as he's just straight up black, and so these aren't comparable in this instance. Ears/fins. There's a fine line with these things, for when they are long enough, too short, or too long, and Thunder crosses that line. Toothless's are quite long, yes, but they are also thin and not longer than his entire head. They are only about the size of his mouth, and that length works wonders. Light Knights are shorter but thicker than Toothless, which gives them their own unique look without making them look off. Meanwhile, Thunders are too long and thick, which makes them seem off balance and like they should fall off at any moment. Another thing I'd like to point out is that those things were smooth for a reason, and it is called aerodynamics. Thunders look like that cause too much drag and flit, which would limit his overall speed. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. His family has been stuck in the hidden world for centuries, and probably hasn't needed to fly as fast as the Night and Light Fears before him, making the fact that they're shaped like that a little neat detail for storytelling. 3. Proportions. I get what they were trying to do with Thunder, but oh stars did they fail. If you want a shorter drag, you can just size down the legs, mess a bit with the torso, and then call it a day. You actually need to consider how things would change when you do that. Let's look at the Light Fury for an example. She's shorter and thinner than Toothless, and she changes accordingly. Her legs look like they could support her weight. Her tail is longer and thinner to help her look lighter than him. Don't want to compare him to her? Alright, let's compare him to Toothless. Toothless has longer legs that get wider as they reach the claws. So even though they are on the skinnier side, they look like they could still work thanks to the base. His tail isn't as long or thick, so it doesn't look like it's that heavy, and his torso's body is longer and thinner than Thunder's, which helps him look like his legs could actually support him. Number 4, the skills. This is probably picking, but it really bothers me. Especially since it's so easy to not be there. Why is every scale visible? It makes him look like he has fish scales. Fish scales. Every other Fury has only had some scales visible on specific parts of the body. Not all of them. It makes it look weird for this dragon. It just doesn't look right. I don't know how else to describe it other than it makes them look like fish scales. I mean, look at them and tell me they don't look like fish scales. Now that we all know my basic opinions on the designs, we can get into what this video is actually about. My own 9 Realms AU, because of course I have that. Because fun fact, people seem to forget I have a Hydrogen Dragon SC, well, 2 of them, a rider and a dragon. Coral and Light Knight respectively, and yes, that is still his name. Yes, I'd like to change it, but I don't know if I ever will, because I'm now attached to this stupid little name. Coral was adopted by a family of Nightlights after a motherhood recently lost her eggs, took her in after a raid of a dragon hunter base. Light Knight was part of that pack, so the two are family, they're cousins technically. Coral was raised in the hidden world like a dragon and chose to stay there after the 3rd movie. Do you see it yet? Yeah, that's right. My OC fixes the biggest annoyance with the show. That Hiccup and his family were down there because now there's another person to document that stuff. Yay, problem solved, right? Right? Who am I kidding? We all know I won't just leave it at that. So let's get into the other stuff I've changed. June and Tom are not together. Tom Alex for the win! To be honest, this was just a preference change. I've shipped worse stuff before looking at you, Lloyd Rumi, or whatever the fuck your ship name is. But I was 9 and didn't know better. But that doesn't matter. My June is so different. She's low-key a different character altogether. She's more like Amity, with a mix of Season 1, Season 2, and Season 5 Ketra. Then she's the canonical June. The tone. Essentially, it feels more like Race to the Edge or like The Owl House. Younger kids can watch this, but this shit's for tweens and teens, maybe. The plot, duh. Now, truth be told, not a lot has changed premise-wise, since I think season 1, for what it is, especially compared to everything else, is fine. So what have I changed here? Well, mostly character backstory stuff. And speaking of which, I should probably get into that to explain how the characters' personalities have changed and stuff. Let's start with June and Eugene, since I've already mentioned June, and these two are the ones that have probably changed the most. Now, speaking in canon, I'm not sure if their father died or if there was a divorce or both, but I decided to go with both for the sake of spicing up June's story a bit. So June took the aforementioned divorce well and went to live with her dad. She never really liked her mother, but the dad died in an accident and she had to move with her mother a few months before the story starts. Eugene, on the other hand, didn't really care for either event, being disillusioned from how much this family was unstable and toxic, going to study fashion design as soon as he could just to be away from this whole mess. June had always believed in magic and myths since that's, I'm guessing it had something to do with her dad's profession, and that only grew after everything that happened, as it was really her only real escape. She'd spent most hours making presentations and videos on how and why they existed, even running a website/blog for it online. She started to fake her upbeat attitude in an attempt to hide how she really feels about, well, basically everything, and when something goes wrong, she's the first to blow up, get upset, and give up, as she doesn't really like anything to go wrong, as many things have already gone for her, and she just has not processed any of her trauma, at all. I like to imagine that her arc would be about grief, understanding, and healing, and that understanding that, oh no, not everything can go perfect, and it almost never will. That's part of the beauty of life, and you should try and make the best of things and lift other people up instead of focusing on the negative or trying to get away from it. Essentially, just learning to cope in a healthy, non-self-destructive or generally destructive way. Meanwhile, Eugene is more calm and collected, withdrawn and creepily silent, even. He keeps to himself and his craft, which, by nature of being one of the few things he enjoys, he's become exceptional at. He'd have two major arcs, one helping Alex overcome what struggles with being social, since he's very much the same, and coming to understanding his family and why it is the way it is, and to rebuild his and June's relationship. Speaking of Alex is pretty much the same. No use fixing what ain't broken. That's more work than I quite frankly want to do, and I don't think it's even necessary. Her personality and arcs are still the same. Long live the queen, best character in the original show, yada yada yada. We all know the jazz, and it is honestly deserved. Tom also has very little changes. He's fine. Not that much that needs to change or I want to change. He just grows a backbone somewhere around season 3 and just tells June to cut out her obsessive behavior with him, and that she's kind of been a bitch to everybody else on the team. His main arcs have changed a bit. The first with him learning to be a leader and responsibility without changing what makes him him, because he is still a bit reckless. And the second one being about how he, as a haddock, has a deep connection with the world and duty to protect it, but that's not all he is or should be or should strive for. Maybe he'll be the one to successfully introduce dragons and humans. Something, I don't know, I haven't thought about it through that much. And that leaves us with D'Angelo. Poor old D. A pretty useless and underdeveloped character in the main show, and truthfully, one that I have the least concrete idea about because of that. But he has daddy issues, so that's something, I guess. His personality is still the same, mostly because what little personality he had is fine. But he's just more serious than the main show. He's the therapy friend, TM, and the mom of the friend group. Always focused on safety for both them and the dragons, as if they get hurt majorly, the jig is up. And if the dragons get hurt, who knows what could happen, honestly. He still wants to be a doctor/vet, and his daddy issues are still going strong, with his character arc being about him and his dad mending their relationship and coming to an understanding, even if they will still disagree. Maybe I'll find more for him to do in the future, but that's all I have right now. And with that, we've kind of come to the end of what I wanted to talk about and most of what I have to talk about. Granted, I do have a bit more trivia and a few plot ideas for episodes and that general season structure if you would like to go over that at some point. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed my ramblings. Stay creative, have a wonderful whatever time it is for you, and stay safe.